Lawrence White was a man running from his past, but that night fate was running faster. Drunk, armed, and desperate, he sped down the highway with flashing lights in his rearview mirror. But the choices he made in those final moments would leave behind a trail of grief, guilt, and unexpected redemption. Before we jump into this heartfelt story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another uplifting tale. The neon sign above the rusty anchor flickered a sickly green, buzzing like a trapped fly against the grimy brick wall of a dive bar tucked off a side street in southeast Washington, D.C. It was late night, May 19th, 2023, and the air inside hung thick with stale beer, cigarette smoke, and the low hum of a jukebox spitting out a scratchy Springsteen track, Thunder Road, fitting for a man about to roll toward ruin. Lawrence White slumped at the bar, his broad shoulders hunched over a chipped glass, his tan hands, calloused from years as a mechanic, trembling as he swirled his fifth whiskey, the amber liquid catching the dim light. At 37, Lawrence was a shadow of the man he'd been, dark hair thinning under a faded Nats cap, hazel eyes bloodshot, his jaw clenched with a restlessness he couldn't name. The bar was a patchwork of lost souls, truckers nursing beers, a couple arguing in a booth, a bartender with a gray ponytail wiping glasses with no hurry. Lawrence fit right in, a regular since his divorce 2 years back had gutted his savings and his pride. His ex-wife, Karen, had taken their daughter Mia, 16 now, and moved across the river to Arlington. Close enough to sting, far enough to fade. "You're a mess, Larry," Karen had said last time they'd spoken, her voice sharp over the phone. "Mia doesn't need this." He'd hung up, the words a blade he dulled with booze, the rusty anchor his refuge from a life unraveling. Debt piling, his auto shop barely afloat, his daughter's texts unanswered. He drained the glass, the burn a familiar friend, and tapped it on the bar, signaling for another. "Rough day?" the bartender asked, his tone flat, pouring without waiting for an answer. Lawrence smirked, a crooked twist of his lips. "Rough life, man. Whiskey's cheaper than fixing it." His voice was rough, slurred at the edges, the liquor loosening a tongue usually tight with silence. Beside him, Jimmy Tate, a wiry welder and sometime drinking buddy, leaned in, his breath sour with Bud Light. "You're done, Larry. Don't drive tonight," he said, his hand on Lawrence's arm, a rare flicker of concern in his red-rimmed eyes. Lawrence shrugged him off. "I'm fine, just need air." His words a lie, he believed, his hand fishing crumpled bills from his jeans to toss on the bar. The jukebox shifted. Badlands, a fitting echo, and Lawrence stood, swaying slightly, his boots scuffing the sticky floor. His leather jacket hung loose, patched at the elbows, a relic from better days when Mia would ride shotgun to the shop, her laughter filling the cab of his beat-up sedan. Now the car waited outside. A '99 Chevy Malibu, dented hood, tinted windows so dark they hid the mess within. Fast food wrappers, a toolbox, a .38 revolver in the glove box, a holdover from nights he'd worked late in rougher parts of town. "Gonna crash at Pete's," he muttered, more to himself. Pete, a vague friend in Gaithersburg, 25 miles north, a destination he clutched like a lifeline. Jimmy grabbed his sleeve. "Stay, man. Sleep it off." His voice sharper now, the bar's hum fading as heads turned. Lawrence pulled free, his smirk hardening. "I said I'm fine. Back off." He stumbled toward the door, the whiskey a fog in his veins, his steps uneven but defiant, the gun a weight he didn't think about, just there, like the bottle, a piece of who he'd become. The night swallowed him as he pushed outside, the D.C. air cool against his flushed skin, streetlights casting long shadows across the cracked lot where the Malibu sat, its engine coughing to life with a reluctant growl as he slid in. Inside the car was a cave, dark, cluttered, the dashboard glowing faintly, the radio off, silence his companion as he fumbled the key. His phone buzzed, Karen's name flashing, a late-night check he ignored, tossing it to the passenger seat beside the gun, its barrel glinting as he slammed the glove box shut. "Mia's fine without me," he slurred, his voice a rasp, the whiskey blurring her last text. "Dad, call me." Into a memory he drowned. He shifted into gear, tires crunching gravel, the bar's neon fading in the rear view as he pulled onto the street, headlights slicing the dark. I-295 north, a blurry path toward Maryland. The city thinned. Warehouses, gas stations, then the open road of I-270. His speed creeping to 60, then 70. The Malibu rattling, his hands loose on the wheel, his mind a haze of bar lights and Karen's voice. "Just need air," he repeated, a mantra to the night. The gun a cold comfort he didn't plan to use, the whiskey a fire he couldn't quench. Gaithersburg loomed. Suburbs, ramps, a vague promise of Pete's couch. But his eyes drooped, his head nodding, the road a ribbon he followed by instinct, not will. Back at the rusty Anchor, Jimmy shook his head. He's gonna kill himself, his voice low, the bartender shrugging. His call. The jukebox played on. Darkness on the edge of town. A prophecy Lawrence couldn't hear. His sedan weaving north, a shadow moving toward dawn's reckoning. In Arlington, Mia slept, her phone dark, Karen pacing, her worry a thread she'd pull tomorrow. Too late. Lawrence drove, the night stretching vast and unforgiving, a choice made in a bar's dim glow, now a fuse burning toward chaos. A man lost in shadows he couldn't outrun. The clock on the dashboard of Sarah Jennings's Honda Civic glowed 4:50 a.m., its green digits a stark contrast to the gray pre-dawn spilling over Gaithersburg, Maryland, on May 20th, 2023. The quiet suburb hummed with the last whispers of night, streetlights buzzing, a distant train's rumble fading. As Sarah drove home from Holy Cross Hospital, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled after a 12-hour graveyard shift. At 29, she was a woman of steady hands and tired eyes, blonde hair tied back in a messy bun, her freckled face pale under the strain of back-to-back codes, her body aching for the bed she shared with her husband Tom and their 2-year-old daughter Ellie. The ramp to I-270 loomed ahead, a shortcut off Rockledge Drive she took to shave minutes from the commute, her mind drifting to coffee and sleep. She slowed at the ramp's curve, headlights sweeping the asphalt, when a shape jolted her awake. A car, a beat-up sedan with tinted windows, idling dead center in the middle lane, its taillights dark, its hood faintly steaming. Sarah's breath caught, her nurse's instinct kicking in, accident, overdose, heart attack, and she eased the Civic to the shoulder, gravel crunching under her tires, her hands fumbling for her phone. The sedan's driver slumped against the wheel, a shadow unmoving, and her pulse quickened. The night's stillness suddenly heavy. "Come on, pick up," she muttered, dialing 911, her voice trembling as the line connected. The dispatcher's calm tone a lifeline in the dark. "Montgomery County 911, what's your emergency?" The voice crackled. Sarah leaned forward, squinting through her windshield. "There's a car on the I-270 ramp off Rockledge. Guy's not moving. Slumped over, looks bad. I'm a nurse. Might be unconscious, I don't know." Her words tumbled, her eyes locked on the sedan, its tinted glass hiding details, a faint glint of metal. A gun, flashing in her mind before she shook it off. "He's blocking the lane. No lights, nothing." "Hurry, please," she added, her breath fogging the window, the dispatcher typing fast. "Police en route. Stay clear, ma'am." Her warning a chill Sarah felt deep. She stayed put, engine idling, headlights painting the sedan in stark relief, her hands gripping the wheel as minutes stretched. 2, 3. The night's quiet, a lie masking what brewed. At home, 5 miles away, Tom Jennings stirred in their split-level house, his paramedic shift looming at 6 a.m. At 30, he was a rock, broad-shouldered, brown hair cropped short, his steady hands honed by years on Gaithersburg's ambulances. He rolled over, checking Ellie's monitor, her soft snores a comfort. Unaware Sarah's call had set a chain in motion, his own role hours from unfolding. "Be safe, babe," he'd said at midnight, her shift's start, a prayer he'd whisper again soon. At the Montgomery County Police Station 5 miles south, Sergeant Brett Trahan grabbed his keys, his 29 years on the force etched in the lines of his weathered face, graying hair under his cap, blue eyes sharp despite the hour. "Got a call. Car on 270. Driver down," he barked, rousing Officer Quentin Bowles, a 24-year-old rookie with a buzz cut and eager hands, his first month still a blur of nerves and coffee. "Let's roll. Could be a drunk, could be worse," Trahan said, his voice gravelly, his cruiser's lights flashing as they peeled out, Bowles buckling in, his pulse racing. Routine check or something bigger, he couldn't tell. The cruiser cut through Gaithersburg's empty streets, suburban homes dark, a gas station's neon flickering. Reaching the ramp by 4:58 a.m., dawn a gray smudge on the horizon. Sarah watched, her heart thudding as their lights swept the scene, relief mixing with dread. Trahan parked behind the sedan, Bowles beside him, their flashlights slicing the gloom, the Chevy Malibu's outline stark, dented still, a ghost in the lane. "Stay back," Trahan radioed dispatch. "Unresponsive male, vehicle stopped, checking now." Bowles swallowed, his hand on his holster. "Think he's out cold?" Trahan shrugged. "Hope so, let's see." The gray dawn crept over Gaithersburg, Maryland on May 20th, 2023. Its faint light smudging the edges of the Rockledge Drive ramp to I-270, where a beat-up Chevy Malibu sat like a stubborn ghost in the middle lane. It was 5 a.m., and the air hung cool and still, broken only by the pulsing red and blue lights of a Montgomery County police cruiser parked 20 feet back, its headlights carving the sedan's dented frame in stark relief. Sergeant Brett Trahan stood behind his open door, his weathered face taut under his cap, his blue eyes narrowed as he gripped his flashlight, its beam piercing the Malibu's heavily tinted windows. At 29 years a cop, he'd seen drunks, wrecks, and worse, but this, car-dead center, driver slumped, prickled his instincts, a quiet threat in the morning's hush. Beside him, Officer Quinton Bowles shifted, his 24-year-old frame tense, his buzz-cut head glistening with sweat despite the chill, his hand hovering near his holstered Glock. His rookie month had been traffic stops and noise complaints, not this, a call from a nurse, Sarah Jennings, about a man down, now stirring in a car that wouldn't budge. "Think he's passed out?" Bowles asked, his voice low, cracking slightly, his flashlight joining Trahan's, two beams dancing over the tinted glass. "Maybe," Trahan grunted, his tone gravelly. "But he's moving now, slow and easy, kid." He tapped his radio. "Dispatch, Unit 412. Unresponsive male waking, tinted windows, no visuals yet." Sarah watched from her Civic, parked on the shoulder 50 feet back, her blonde hair falling loose as she leaned forward, her nurse's hands gripping the wheel, her breath shallow. The officer's shouts carried, "Sir, you okay?" And she squinted, the sedan's shadow shifting, her call at 4:50 a.m., now a thread pulling tight, dread coiling in her gut. Trahan rapped the driver's window. "Hands up! Let's see 'em!" His voice firm, cutting the silence, Bowles circling to the passenger side, his boots crunching gravel, his heart thudding. Drunk? High? Armed? The night tilting toward something he couldn't name. Inside the Malibu, Lawrence White stirred, his head lolling against the wheel, his Nat's cap askew, his hazel eyes bleary as whiskey fog cleared just enough to register the lights, the voices. At 37, he was a wreck, tan skin flushed, dark hair matted with sweat, his leather jacket creased from hours slumped. "What's the problem?" he slurred, a smirk tugging his lips, his right hand twitching toward the .38 revolver on his lap, a reflex from DC's rougher nights. Not a plan. Just there, like the bottle he'd drained at the Rusty Anchor. The flashlight beams stabbed through the tint, and he squinted. "Huh?" His voice a rasp, the world a blur of red, blue, and regret. "Hands up now!" Trahan barked, stepping back, his Glock drawn low, his stance steady as Bowles mirrored him. "Show your hands!" The rookie's voice pitching high, his training kicking in but nerves fraying. Lawrence chuckled, a jagged sound. "You scared?" His taunt slow, mocking, his left hand rising lazily, the right hovering near the gun, a dare he didn't fully grasp. Trahan's eyes locked on that hand. "Put the gun down. Don't move." His command sharp, spotting the barrel's glint through the crack of the window Lawrence had rolled down an inch, the standoff snapping into focus. Bowles gasped, "Gun! Sarge!" His Glock snapping up, his breath short. "Let me see your other hand. Keep it up." Trahan radioed fast. "Unit 412, armed suspect, handgun on lap, non-compliant. Send backup." Dispatch crackled. "Units 415, 419 en route. ETA 3 minutes." A lifeline Trahan clung to, his voice steady. "Unlock the door. Hands on the wheel." Lawrence smirked wider. "What gun?" His right hand drifting, teasing, the whiskey afire in his veins. His mind a haze of bar stools and Karen's voice. "You're a mess." A life he'd lost now, a game he played with strangers in blue. Sarah's hands shook, her phone slipping to the seat. "Oh, God," she whispered. The officer's shouts. "Open hands up! Watch that right hand!" A chorus of control fraying at the edges. She saw the gun's shadow, her nurse's calm cracking. He's gonna shoot. Her call a spark now flaring, the ramp a stage she couldn't leave. Trahan edged closer. "Put the gun down, now!" His tone steel, Bowles echoing. "Drop it, man!" Their cruiser a shield, the sedan a bomb ticking in the dawn. Lawrence laughed, a drunken hiccup. "You're funny." His right hand lifting the .38 an inch, then dropping it back. A taunt, a test. His foot nudging the gas, the engine growling low. Backup roared in. 2 cruisers, Officers Baxter and Johnson, lights flashing, boxing the Malibu from behind and left. 4 guns drawn now, a net tightening. "Hands up, last chance!" Baxter yelled, a burly vet, his voice booming. Johnson, younger, circling right. "Unlock it!" Lawrence's smirk faded, his eyes darting. Cops, lights, a trap. His hand gripping the gun tighter, then loosening. All right," he slurred, the whiskey bravado cracking, his left hand fumbling the lock, the door clicking open a sliver. "Step out, slow," Trahan ordered, his Glock steady, Bowles trembling. "Keep 'em up." The standoff teetering, a breath from collapse. Sarah held her breath, the officer's line a wall, Lawrence's shadow shifting. He could surrender, he could fight, the dawn gray and unforgiving. His gun hand twitched, his foot slammed the gas. "Move that car!" Trahan shouted, but Lawrence shoved into reverse, the Malibu lurching, crunching a cruiser's fender, tires screeching as he broke free, the standoff shattering into chaos, a drunk man's flight into the dark. The gray dawn cracked open over I-270 northbound, its asphalt a dim ribbon stretching past Gaithersburg, Maryland, as the screech of tires shattered the stillness on May 20th, 2023, at 5:05 a.m. Lawrence White's 99 Chevy Malibu lurched from the Rockledge drive ramp, its dented frame weaving wildly, engine roaring as he floored it, the standoff with police exploding into a reckless flight. At 37, Lawrence was a man unhinged, tan hands slick with sweat on the wheel, hazel eyes bleary under his Nats cap, whiskey fog fueling a grin as he gripped the .38 revolver on his lap, a taunt he'd flung at the cops now a spur in his veins. "Catch me if you can," he slurred, his voice a rasp lost in the wind whipping through the cracked window. Sergeant Brett Trahan slammed his cruiser into gear, its lights pulsing red and blue, tires spinning gravel as he peeled after the sedan, his weathered face tight with focus. "He's running," he barked into the radio, his 29 years steadying his grip. "Unit 412, suspect fleeing north on 270, armed, intoxicated, pursuit active." Beside him, Officer Quentin Bowles clutched the dash, his 24-year-old frame jolting with the cruiser's swerve, his buzz-cut head glistening, his Glock still drawn, heart hammering. "He's crazy!" Backup units, Officers Baxter and Johnson followed, their cruisers roaring in tandem, a trio of lights cutting the dawn, sirens wailing a chorus that echoed off the empty highway. Lawrence hit 80 miles per hour, the Malibu shuddering, its tires whining as he veered across lanes, the tinted windows a shield hiding his chaos. Fast food wrappers, the gun, a life unraveling in the rear view. His mind was a haze. Rusty Anchor's whiskey, Karen's voice, Mia's unanswered texts, a blur he outran, the cop's lights a taunting ghost he laughed at. "You're slow." His right hand twitched, lifting the .38, then dropping it, a game he played alone, his foot heavy, the speedometer nudging 85. The road a tunnel of gray and green, trees, guardrails, exit signs flashing past. Trahan kept pace, 200 feet back, his cruiser steady at 75 miles per hour. "Stay with him, box him in," he shouted, Bowles nodding. "He's all over." Baxter's voice crackled through. "Unit 415, closing from the left." Johnson trailed right. 419, got his flank. The net tightening, headlights slicing the dark. "Dispatch, suspect northbound, mile 10, request stop sticks." Trahan radioed, his tone sharp, knowing speed alone wouldn't stop this drunk with a gun. Bowles swallowed. He's gonna crash, his rookie nerves fraying, the chase a beast he couldn't tame, Trahan's calm a rock he clung to. Sarah Jennings watched from her Civic, still parked on the ramp, her blonde hair falling loose as the Malibu tore away, police lights chasing, her nurse's calm shattered. He's running? Her phone trembling in her hand, the call she'd made at 4:50 a.m., now a spark igniting this storm. She started her engine, easing onto 270 south, her route home crossing the chaos, her heart pounding. What did I start? Unaware her husband, Tom, would soon face its wreckage. The ramp faded behind, the chase a distant roar, her breath fogging the windshield, dread a weight she couldn't shake. Lawrence swerved, the Malibu fishtailing as he hit 90, tires screaming, the engine a whine on the edge of collapse. Pete's place. Almost there, he muttered. Gaithersburg a blur. His plan a drunk's delusion. Route 28. A couch. Escape. His gun hand steadying, then slipping. The .38 clattering to the floorboard. A curse lost in the wind. The highway stretched. Sparse traffic scattering, a pickup veering off. Horns blaring. His speed a bullet through the dawn. The cop's lights relentless, a pack he couldn't shake. "Come on!" he yelled, slamming the dash. The Malibu a beast he rode blind. Whiskey bravado a fire burning out. Trahan closed to 150 feet. "He's losing it. Get those sticks," he barked, dispatch crackling. "Units 422, 425, mile 12, stop sticks deploying." Bowles volunteered. "I'll do it." His voice high, adrenaline surging, Trahan nodding. "Careful, kid. Rear wheels." They pulled ahead, mile 11 flashing past. The rookie leaping out as Trahan slowed, Bowles darting to the median, stop sticks, spiked strips, in hand, his breath short. "Here goes!" Lawrence's sedan loomed, a green blur, and Bowles flung the sticks under the rear tires, diving back as rubber shredded, sparks flying. "Sticks down!" he yelled, scrambling to the cruiser. The Malibu jolted, tires bursting, Lawrence's grin fading. "What the—" His hands yanking the wheel, control slipping as the sedan veered right, then left, 90 miles per hour dropping to 70, then 80 again, a wounded beast roaring north. "He's hit him," Trahan radioed. "Suspect compromised, closing in." Baxter and Johnson tightened, 100 feet back. "He's toast." The chase a thread snapping, Lawrence's flight doomed, his gun forgotten, his mind a fog of panic and rage. "No, no," he shouted, the wheel bucking. Route 28 nearing, a salvation he'd never reach. Sarah drove south, the sirens a wail in her ears, her Civic trembling as she passed mile 14, the chase a shadow northbound, her call a ghost, haunting the dawn. "Be safe," she whispered. Tom's shift ticking closer, their lives a thread in the tangle. On 270, the Malibu roared, tires shredded, Lawrence's fate sealed, the cops a wall he couldn't break, a chase ignited by whiskey now burning toward its brutal end. The express lanes of I-270 northbound shimmered under a gray dawn, the asphalt a slick blur south of Route 28 in Gaithersburg, Maryland, as Lawrence White's 99 Chevy Malibu roared at 90 miles per hour on May 20th, 2023, at 5:07 a.m. Its tires, shredded by stop sticks laid minutes ago, screamed against the rims, sparks flying, the sedan a wounded beast veering wildly through the early light. At 37, Lawrence was a man unraveling, tan hands clawing the wheel, his Nats cap lost to the floorboard, hazel eyes wide with panic, whiskey fog burning off into raw fear. "No, no!" he yelled, his voice a slurred howl, the .38 revolver rattling beside his feet. A forgotten threat as the car bucked, control slipping through his drunken grip. Sergeant Brett Trahan's cruiser trailed 100 feet back, its lights pulsing red and blue. The veteran's weathered face set hard, his 29 years steadying his hands as he pushed 80 miles per hour. "He's done! Watch him!" he barked, his voice cutting through the siren's wail. Officer Quentin Bowles beside him, gripping the dash, his 24-year-old frame jolting. "He's gonna—" The rookie's words died as the Malibu swerved right, then left, tires shredding further, metal grinding asphalt. Back up. Officers Baxter and Johnson closed in, 50 feet behind. "Unit 415, he's losing it." Baxter radioed, the chase a thread snapping, dawn a witness to its end. Lawrence's world tilted, the highway a tunnel of blur, guardrails flashing silver. Route 28's exit, a mirage he'd never reach. "Come on!" he shouted, slamming the dash, his foot jammed on the gas, the Malibu hitting a curve too fast, too broken. The right rear rim caught the edge, a jolt that spun the car sideways, tires bursting fully, and it flipped, once, twice, metal crumpling, glass shattering, a deafening crunch as it slammed a guardrail, then ricocheted into the lanes. A minivan, a silver Dodge, Mark and Lisa Cole commuting early, loomed ahead, its driver braking hard. "Mark, watch out!" Lisa screamed, but the Malibu's tail smashed their front, spinning both vehicles in a chaos of steel and dust. The sedan rolled a final time, its roof caving, and Lawrence, unbelted, a drunk's oversight, was ejected, his body arcing through the air, leather jacket flapping, landing with a sickening thud on the asphalt 20 feet away. Trahan's cruiser swerved left, too close, its front tire catching Lawrence's crumpled form, rolling over, a dull thump unnoticed in the roar, before screeching to a halt. "Bail out!" Trahan yelled, leaping from the driver's seat, Bowles tumbling out. "What? What happened?" His rookie eyes wide, the dust settling. The Malibu a twisted heap, the minivan skewed, its airbags puffed white. Lawrence lay still, blood pooling dark under his head, his chest crushed, his jacket torn, the .38 glinting nearby, a life snuffed in seconds, whiskey's endgame played out. Trahan ran up. "Hands! Let me see your hands!" His Glock drawn, then dropping as he saw the truth. "He's down." Bowles froze. "Sarge, I didn't—" His voice shaking, Trahan kneeling. "Stay back, EMS now." His radio alive. "Unit 412, crash, suspect ejected, possible DOA, 2 Vics in a second vehicle." Baxter and Johnson flanked the minivan. "Out! Hands up!" Mark and Lisa stumbling free, blood trickling from cuts. "We're okay, just shaken," Mark gasped. Lisa clutching his arm, her breath ragged. EMS sirens wailed, an ambulance rolling in fast. Tom Jennings, 30, among the crew, his paramedic hand steady as he jumped out, kit slung, unaware his wife Sarah's call had sparked this. "Over here!" Trahan waved, Tom sprinting to Lawrence, his boots skidding in blood, his gloved hands checking. Pulse gone, pupils fixed, chest still. "He's gone," Tom whispered, stunned, standing as his partner rushed to the coals, Mark with a gash on his forehead, Lisa's arm bruised, minor wounds in a major wreck. "Get him to Holy Cross," Tom called, his voice firm, the scene a blur of lights, shouts, and metal. Bowles stared, his Glock limp. "I laid the sticks. He ran 'em." His breath short, Trahan's hand on his shoulder. "You did your job. He chose this." The rookie nodded, pale, the thump of Trahan's tire a ghost he'd hear later, dash cams rolling, a truth they'd face. "Crash, crash, crash," Johnson yelled, securing the scene. Traffic halted, the highway a graveyard, Lawrence's sedan, a mangled tomb, the minivan scarred, the coals trembling, alive by inches. Sarah, southbound on 270, passed mile 14, the sirens fading, her heart sinking. "What's happening?" Her call a thread now knotted in wreckage she couldn't see. Tom packed his kit, Lawrence's body draped. "No saving that," he muttered, his steady hands shaking slightly. The dawn gray and unforgiving, 5:09 a.m., 2 minutes from chase to chaos, a drunk man's flight ended in blood and steel. "Ambulance 7-2 Vics, minor injuries, en route," he radioed. Mark and Lisa loaded, their eyes wide, a brush with death they'd carry. Trahan stood. "Secure it. AG's coming." His voice low, the weight of protocol settling, Bowles trembling. "He's dead, Sarge. He's dead." The rookie's first fatality, a scar forming fast. The express lanes stilled, lights flashing, the Malibu's wreckage a monument to recklessness. Lawrence's echo a brutal note. Whiskey, a gun, a choice. Silenced under tires and dawn's cold gaze. A crash that fell, a dawn that broke. The morning sun crept over Gaithersburg, Maryland on May 20th, 2023, its pale light glinting off the twisted wreckage of Lawrence White's '99 Chevy Malibu, now a crumpled heap on the I-270 express lanes south of Route 28. It was 6:15 a.m., an hour past the crash that had ended his life, and the scene buzzed with a somber rhythm. Police lights pulsing, EMS sirens fading, the air sharp with gasoline and blood. Sergeant Brett Trahan stood by his cruiser, its front tire stained red, his weathered face etched with fatigue, his blue eyes scanning the cordoned-off highway. At 29 years a cop, he'd seen death, drunks, shootouts. But this, a man under his wheels, gnawed deeper, his steady hands clenching the radio. Unit 412, scene secure, suspect deceased, 2 Vics en route. Officer Quentin Bowles leaned against the cruiser, his 24-year-old frame trembling, his buzz-cut head slick with sweat, his rookie eyes fixed on Lawrence's draped body. blood seeping through the tarp, a leg twisted wrong. "I didn't see him, Sarge. He just rolled out," he stammered, his Glock holstered, his voice a thread fraying fast. Trahan's hand gripped his shoulder, firm. "We followed protocol. Sticks worked. He ran 'em. You're good, kid." Bowles nodded, pale, the thump of the tire a ghost in his ears. "He's dead. Checked out right there." His first fatality, a weight he couldn't shake. "Dashcam's got it. Age'll sort it," Trahan said, his tone low, the Maryland Attorney General's investigation looming, a shadow they'd face. At Holy Cross Hospital, 5 miles south, Tom Jennings scrubbed blood from his hands, his paramedic scrub stained, his 30-year-old frame steady but shaken as he stepped from the ER bay. Mark and Lisa Cole, minivan victims, lay in curtained beds, cuts bandaged, bruises blooming, their minor injuries a miracle in the wreck's chaos. "Stable. Lucky as hell," Tom muttered, his brown hair damp, his steady hands flexing, Lawrence's lifeless form flashing. "He's gone." A call he'd made at 5:09 a.m., his shifts start a blur of steel and screams. Sarah, his wife, burst through the doors, her nurse's scrubs wrinkled, her blonde hair loose. "Tom!" Her voice breaking as she ran to him, her call at 4:50 a.m. A thread now knotted in his arms. "You okay?" she asked, her freckled face pale, her hands clutching his. "I saw it. Sirens, lights. He ran." Tom nodded. "Got him. Dead on scene. 2 others. Banged up but alive." Her breath hitched. "I called it in. Saw him on the ramp, slumped. Guilt gnawing, her nurse's calm cracking. Did I—" Tom pulled her close. "You saved those 2. Don't carry this." His voice a rock. Their toddler Ellie a distant tether, their lives tangled in a dawn they'd unravel later. Mark groaned nearby. "That guy crazy," Lisa whispering. "We're okay, thank God." Their brush with death a quiet scar forming. At the police station, Trahan and Bowles debriefed, coffee cooling in styrofoam cups. The room stark. Metal chairs, a flickering bulb. "Suspect, Lawrence White, 37, intoxicated, armed," Trahan recited, his gravelly voice clipped, dashcam footage cued. "Engaged at 500, fled 505, crashed 507, ejected, run over." Bowles stared at the table. "Stop sticks. My call." His voice small, Trahan's nod firm, "Right call." He chose the rest. Lieutenant Karen Hayes, their CO, leaned in. "A G's IID's on it. Independent investigations. You're clean. Stick to the report." The rookie swallowed, the thump echoing. He didn't stop, gun in his lap. A lesson burned in, Trahan's silence a shield he leaned on. In Arlington, Virginia, 20 miles east, Karen White answered her phone at 7 a.m., her 38-year-old frame stiffening in her kitchen, coffee spilling as a Gaithersburg officer's voice cut through. "Mrs. White, it's about Lawrence. He's deceased. Crash on 270. Her ex-husband, a mechanic she'd left 2 years back, now a memory crashing hard. Whiskey, fights, Mia's tears. "How?" she whispered, numb. The officer's reply clinical. "Drunk, armed, fled police, wrecked, didn't make it." She sank to a chair. "Oh, God." Her dark hair falling loose, her hands shaking as Mia, 16, shuffled in. Pajamas, phone in hand. "Mom?" Karen's voice broke. "Your dad. He's gone, baby. Car accident." Mia froze, her hazel eyes, Lawrence's eyes, widening. "What?" "No, he texted me last week." Her voice rising, anger flaring. "He was a mess, not this." She stormed to her room, slamming the door, sobs muffled. "Why'd he do it?" A question Karen couldn't answer, her own tears falling. "I don't know, honey." She clutched her phone, his last call ignored. "Mia needs me." A lie he'd lived, now a truth she'd bury. The kitchen stilled, coffee cold. Their fractured family a wound reopened, Lawrence's echo a brutal note they'd carry. On 270, tow trucks hauled the Malibu, its frame a mangled shell. The minivan next, guardrail bent, blood scrubbed, traffic rerouted. Trahan watched. Another one. Damn shame. His voice low, Bowles silent, the tarp gone, Lawrence's body bagged for the morgue. Tom drove home with Sarah, Ellie's nap looming. "He didn't have to die," she whispered, Tom's hand on hers. "He chose it. We didn't." The Coles rested, Mark's stitches itching, Lisa's arms slung. Close call, they murmured. A dawn they'd survived. A stranger they'd mourn in silence. The station buzzed. IID arriving, footage copied, a case unfolding. Lawrence's gun logged, whiskey bottles bagged, a life reduced to evidence. The echoes spread. Grief, guilt, duty. A morning heavy with what was, a warning ringing clear. The June sun baked Gaithersburg, Maryland, its heat shimmering off the asphalt of Route 270, where wildflowers now edged the express lanes south of Route 28, a quiet contrast to the wreckage that had scarred them weeks ago. It was mid-June 2023, a month since Lawrence White's Chevy Malibu flipped and burned out his life on May 20th, and the highway hummed with routine, cars rolling, horns faint. Its chaos a memory etched in those who'd lived it. At the Montgomery County Police Station, Sergeant Brett Trahan leaned over a desk, his weathered face lined deeper, his blue eyes scanning a training log, his 29 years a steady anchor as he drilled Officer Quentin Bowles on pursuit tactics. "Sticks go here, rear wheels always," he said, his gravelly voice firm, tapping a diagram, the crash a lesson he'd carved into protocol. Bowles, now 24 with a month more under his belt, nodded, his buzz-cut head glistening, his rookie hands steadier but his eyes still shadowed. Lawrence's body under Trahan's tire a ghost he couldn't shake. "Got it, Sarge. I see it now," he said, his voice low, the thump echoing less replaced by drills. "Stop sticks, de-escalation, a shield against the next call." The AG's Independent Investigations Division had cleared them. Justified pursuit, no fault. Dash cams showing Lawrence's gun, his flight, the wreck his choice. "You're solid, kid," Trahan said, his hand on Bowles' shoulder. "Learn, move on." Bowles managed a half smile. Trying, the weight a scar he'd wear, a cop growing through it. 5 miles south, Sarah Jennings sat on her porch, the split-level house quiet, her blonde hair loose, her freckled face softer as she watched Ellie, now 2, toddle with a toy truck. Her nurse's scrubs hung in the closet, her shift traded for a rare day off. The call at 4:50 a.m. on May 20th, a thread she couldn't cut. "I saw him slumped," she murmured. Tom beside her, his paramedic hands cradling coffee, his 30-year-old frame a rock. "You saved 2, Mark and Lisa," he said, his brown hair catching sun. "Don't carry him." She nodded. "I know, just feels close." Her eyes on Ellie, the wreck a what-if she held tighter, their daughter a tether pulling her back. Tom sipped, saw the Coles at the ER, walking wounded, healing. His voice steady, Lawrence's blood a memory he'd washed off, his shift's chaos a badge he bore. "He didn't have to go like that," Sarah said, her hand in his, and Tom squeezed. "He chose it. We didn't." A mantra they lived, their porch a refuge, the highway's echo a hum they tuned out. Ellie giggled, "Truck," and Sarah smiled, faint. "She's growing fast." The wreck a shadow shrinking, a lesson in holding close what mattered. In Arlington, Virginia, Karen White stood in a cemetery, her 38-year-old frame rigid beside a small headstone. Lawrence White, 1986 to 2023, the service sparse, a week past, her dark hair pulled tight, her hands clutching a box with his. Revolver, a relic she'd locked away. Mia, 16, knelt, her hazel eyes, his eyes, red-rimmed, her fingers tracing the stone. "He wasn't all bad," she whispered, a photo of them at 6, smiling, garage grease on his shirt, tucked in her pocket. "No, he wasn't," Karen said, her voice breaking, "just lost. Too far." She'd buried him with Mia's tears, her own anger. "You're a mess, Larry." A regret she'd boxed with the gun, keeping it from her daughter's reach. "Why'd he do it?" Mia asked, standing, her voice sharp. "Drunk a gun, he didn't care." Karen sighed. "He cared. Couldn't show it right." Her hand on Mia's shoulder. "We move on. Stronger." Mia nodded. "I hate him sometimes. Then I don't." Her sobs gone. A teen wrestling a father's ghost, his last text. "Call me." A wound she'd heal slow. They walked away, the cemetery still. Lawrence's echo a weight they'd shed piece by piece. A life ended but not erased. In Gaithersburg, Mark and Lisa Cole sat in their kitchen. Their minivan scrapped, a new SUV parked outside, their cuts faded. Bruises yellowed. A month since the crash that nearly took them. Mark, 42, stirred tea, his forehead scar itching. "Close call," he said, his voice low. Lisa, 39, nodding, her arm unslung. "Too close, thank God we're here." They'd driven home from Holy Cross that day, shaky. That guy, crazy. Replaying the Malibu's tail smashing their front, airbags saving them, Lawrence's fate a shadow they didn't name. "Life's shorter than you think," Lisa murmured, Mark's hand finding hers. Their days reshaped, quieter, closer, a brush with death, a lens they'd keep. At the station, the IID report dropped. Public now, footage online. Lawrence's standoff. Chase, crash sparking debates. Drunk driver deserved it. Cops too aggressive? A storm Trahan ignored. "We did our job," he told Bowles. The rookie scrolling comments. "People don't get it. He had a gun." Hayes briefed them. "Training's tighter, pursuit's stricter," her voice firm. The wreck a ripple in policy, a scar on the force. Trahan drove 270 that night, wildflowers catching his lights. "Damn shame," he muttered. Bowles beside him. "Yeah, but we're here." A weight they'd reckon with, a night they'd carry. Sarah kissed Ellie goodnight, Tom locking up. "Safe now," he said, their hands linked, the highways hum a distant pulse. Karen tucked Mia in, the gun boxed. "We're enough." Her resolve a thread of strength. Mark and Lisa slept, their SUV a shield. The Coles quiet a gift reclaimed. The echoes spread, scars, lessons, lives. A reckoning heavy but not final. A dawn still unfolding. Spring 2025 bathed Gaithersburg, Maryland, in a soft glow. The sun rising over I-270's express lanes south of Route 28, where wildflowers now stretched thick along the guardrail. Their yellow blooms a quiet tribute to a night 2 years past. It was May, the air warm with new grass and promise. The highways hum a steady pulse. Cars rolling, lives moving. Its scars from Lawrence White's crash on May 20th, 2023, faded to memory. At the Montgomery County Police Station, Sergeant Brett Trahan stood in a classroom, his weathered face softer under gray hair, his blue eyes sharp as he mentored a group of at-risk teens. Hoodies, wary glances, his 31 years a steady hand. "Choices matter," he said, his gravelly voice firm, pointing to a photo of stopsticks. "One night can change everything. Make it count right." Officer Quentin Bowles, now 26, leaned by the door, his buzz cut gone for a short fade, his rookie nerves hardened into quiet strength, a corporal's stripe on his sleeve. The crash, Lawrence under Trahan's tire, had scarred him, but he'd grown through it. Patrols sharper, his hands steady on calls. "You're good at this, Sarge," he said, a half-smile breaking, the thump a whisper now, a lesson he shared with kids teetering on edges he'd seen collapse. "Gotta give back," Trahan replied, his nod a bond forged in that dawn, their duty a light beyond the dark. 5 miles south, Sarah Jennings knelt in her backyard, her blonde hair tied back, her freckled face glowing as she planted daisies with Ellie. Now 4, her giggles a melody. At 31, Sarah's nurse shifts balanced with purpose. She and Tom, 32, volunteered at drunk driving seminars. Her call at 4:50 a.m. in 2023, a spark turned to advocacy. "Don't drink and drive, folks. It's not worth it," she'd say, her voice steady. Tom beside her, his paramedic hands passing flyers. "We've seen the end game." Their split level hummed, Ellie's toys, coffee brewing, a life held tighter, the wreck a shadow they'd turned to light, a family stronger for it. In Arlington, Virginia, Mia White, now 18, stood by the crash site on 270, her hazel eyes, her father's eyes, clear as she laid a bouquet of sunflowers, her dark hair loose, a letter in her hand. "Dad, I forgive you." At Lawrence's grave last year, she'd let go. His whiskey, his gun, his mess a weight she'd shed, Karen's strength her anchor. He wasn't all bad, she'd told her mom, now a college freshman, her art, sketches of garages, his smile, her way forward. "Rest now," she whispered, the flowers a peace offering, the highway a place she'd claimed, her father's echo a lesson, not a chain. Across state lines in Colorado Springs, Mark Cole, 44, coached a Pee Wee football team, his forehead scar a faint line, his voice booming, "Run it left, Alex." Lisa, 41, cheered from the bleachers, her arm healed, their new SUV parked nearby, a life reclaimed since the minivan wreck. Alex Ruiz, 7, darted with Danny's dog tags glinting. Ruiz, Daniel A. A nod to the dog tag pact, his Uncle Mike Torres on the sidelines, a thread of hope linking stories. "Close call made us better," Mark told Lisa, her hand in his, their days slower, deeper, a dawn they'd earned through survival. Back in Gaithersburg, Trahan drove 270, wildflowers catching his lights. "Still here," he murmured. Bowles beside him. "Yeah, and stronger." Their cruiser rolled past the crash site, a marker gone, its lesson etched. Pursuits tighter, kids mentored, a force refined by one night's cost. Sarah and Tom spoke at a high school, Ellie drawing nearby. "You've got power, use it right," Tom said, Sarah nodding. "We did. Still do." Their voices a beacon, the wreck a pivot to purpose. Mia sketched in her dorm, sunflowers on her desk. "I'm okay, Dad." Her art a bridge, her life her own. Karen, 40, gardened in Arlington, her hand steady. Mia's calls a weekly joy. "We're enough," she'd said, the .38 sold, her ex's ghost a faint hum, her strength a root grown deep. Mark tossed a ball with Alex, Lisa baking for the team. "Life's good," she smiled, their kitchen warm, the coals a testament. One choice nearly took them, others built them back. Lawrence's echo faded, whiskey, a gun, a ramp. Its brutal note a warning softened by time, its wreckage a seed for dawn's new light. The sun climbed, Gaithersburg alive, kids biking, lawns green, a town that bore its scars but bloomed beyond them. Trahan parked. Next group tomorrow. His duty a legacy. Bowles grinning. "I'm in." Sarah hugged Ellie. Tom locking up. Safe now, their love a shield. Mia walked campus, her sketchbook full. Karen pruned roses. The Coles laughed, lives woven from a night's thread. A dawn breaking clear. Lawrence rested, his lesson lingered. One choice can shatter, yet others mend. A light rising strong, a story closed with hope. The morning sun rose over I-270, washing away the wreckage but leaving behind the scars. On the pavement, on the people, on the memories of those who lived through that night. Lawrence White's story didn't end in the twisted metal of his Chevy Malibu. It echoed in every life he touched, in every choice that followed. For Sergeant Trahan and Officer Bowles, it became a lesson in the weight of duty and the fine line between justice and tragedy. For Sarah Jennings, the nurse whose call set everything in motion, it was a reminder that even small actions can ripple into something much bigger. And for Karen and Mia White, it was a painful but necessary truth, that sometimes love isn't enough to save someone from themselves, but out of loss can come purpose. Tom and Sarah turned their grief into advocacy, fighting to keep drunk drivers off the roads. Bowles, once haunted by the chase, used his experience to teach the next generation of officers how to handle high-stakes decisions with wisdom, not just instinct. And Mia, after years of anger, finally found peace, not by forgetting her father, but by choosing to remember the best of him. Life moves forward, but it always carries the weight of the past. The difference is what we do with it. One choice can destroy, but another can rebuild. One moment of recklessness can shatter lives, but one moment of courage can change them. If this story resonated with you, share it, learn from it, and most importantly, make choices that you won't regret. Subscribe for more real-life stories that make us think, feel, and change for the better.